Welcome to the Burnout to Lit Up podcast. I am your host, Erica Del Pozo, occupational therapist, certified health coach, CEO and founder of Joy Energy Time, Miami Girl, and Pineapple Lover. In this podcast, we provide the resources on how to deal with stress, burnout, and anxiety, how to get energized, find true satisfaction and alignment in your life, and more. You will learn how to slay your burnout beast and go from burnt out to a lit up life. Let's do this. Welcome to the Burnout to Lit Up podcast. This is episode 12, and today I will be talking about the different stages of burnout. This is true for anyone in the workplace because everyone is at risk for professional burnout. But I will specifically be addressing healthcare professionals here because I'm a healthcare professional. I feel more comfortable talking to healthcare professionals, and I feel like we are dealt with a certain amount of very specific stressors, very unique to our field. So if you are a brand new doctor, nurse, therapist, whoever you are, definitely listen. No matter if you're new, if you've been practicing for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, burnout can happen to anyone, and it actually unfolds before you are aware of what's happening. So especially if you're new, you want to look out for the signs. You want to be aware of what's going on. So I will be sharing those different stages, so you don't want to miss it. My little quote of the day, my mom sent me a message this morning. She sends me a little mantra sometimes, so that's really nice. I like getting them. She sent me a mantra today that said, "Make joy your constant companion." And I recently made an Instagram post about this, talking about what are like some things in your life that are miserable or just not that much fun to look forward to, things that are perhaps mundane or like, like I have to take out the trash, or I have to clean, or I have to do all these reports, or whatever it is. Take that situation that's not necessarily joyous and make it joyful. So by making joy your constant companion. That doesn't mean that you're happy all the time, or that you're a robot, or that you're not allowed to feel any other emotions, but focusing on every single day, coming at your day from a place of love, joy, and compassion. And then you'll notice how much higher your energy vibes are. And when you start off your day without setting intentions, you set yourself up. In my case, I feel like this happens with a lot of people. If you don't really set your intentions for the day, you set yourself up to be vulnerable to feeling low vibe energies, feeling like, you have to complain about everything, or, you're stuck at the red light and there's so much traffic and everything becomes like so heavy. And like, we all have those days, but if you set your intentions to make joy a constant companion, you're going to be a lot more mindful of how you approach things that happen to you, things that you can't really control, but how you're going to approach to those things. So yay, thanks Mom for sending me that little mantra. I really like it. And I hope you guys like it too. So healthcare burnout is a real thing. And I want to give you an analogy. And I want you to think of yourself as a bank. Your energy is a bank. So think about your energy in 3 different ways. Your physical energy, which is quite obvious. Your basic, okay, I'm going to work out. I'm feeling energetic today. Your social emotional energy, basically your ability to be available emotionally and to be compassionate. And your spiritual energy, this isn't necessarily about religion. Your spiritual energy is kind of like your big purpose. Like, why am I connected to my work? Why am I doing what I'm doing? Like, what are my values? So imagine that every single day you work, there is a withdrawal from either your physical energy, social emotional, or spiritual energy. You withdraw every single day from your bank account. So that can differ in people. That's why I don't like the term work-life balance, because that is just not realistic or ideal for a lot of people. So imagine that some people might exert more physical energy than others, or more social emotional energy, whatever. But everyone has different degrees of how much energy they exert. And what happens is, like, our job at this energetic level is to keep our energy bank in a positive balance. We don't want to overdraft. We don't want to go in the negative. We want to exert, but we also want to maintain that energy so we're not depleted. So what happens with burnout? Your energy sources are completely depleted. That is when you are in the negative. That's when you overdraw from one of your bank accounts, which is no bueno. No es bueno. Your life outside of work, whether that's in relationships, family, leisure, different areas of your life, you can burn out at work, but the consequences you will feel at work because of the burnout are going to spill into those other areas of your life. When your bank account is low or in the negative, and you're not recharging it or replenishing your bank account fast enough or consistently enough, that is when your person, your being, your machine just kind of stops working. I can speak to this personally, as I've shared my burnout story in the first episode, but if you want to hear more about my story, check that out. And there's also a ton of stuff on my website, joyenergytime.com, so you can check out show notes, blog posts about this. I do share my story more in depth, but basically I have been burnt out at work, and it led me to be so inspired to create this podcast and to talk to others about how to prevent it, how to stop it in its tracks, or what to do if you are burnt out. So I've been there. I've been at a place where my bank account, there was a lot of outflow, but there was no inflow. So I was basically using a credit card. I was just borrowing energy and not getting it back. Like, I like this analogy because it feels so real to me. Like, I was using a credit card, so to speak, for the longest time with energy, and I just wasn't adequately restoring myself or replenishing myself. So what does burnout feel like? The three major characteristics of burnout include exhaustion. So that is mental, physical, socio-emotional exhaustion. You're just depleted. You feel like you've been hit by a truck. Cynicism. It's basically you lose your ability to connect with people. You lose the ability to care. You really start to complain a lot. You might even blame and shame or belittle others. And it's not like you're a bitch, or, you could be. I mean, I don't know, but it's kind of like it could be things going on in your head, like, oh, I don't feel like doing this. I'm going to complain about all my patients. I'm going to complain about every little thing at work. I'm going to complain about my coworkers. I'm going to complain and blame and shame everything, either in my head at a subconscious or unconscious level, or very consciously and very openly. So it can happen either way. And decreased self-efficacy. So you may begin to doubt that you are competent, and you doubt that your work really even makes a difference or really matters, and you begin to question what you do. You lose that sense of personal achievement. So burnout is really comprised of those three things together. It's that exhaustion, that cynicism, and decreased self-efficacy. So I'm going to go into some phases of burnout. This isn't so cookie cutter, cut and dry for everyone, but this is generally how it it unfolds. And then you might be listening to this and think, oh, wow, I'm at this phase, or, oh, I'm at this phase. I didn't even realize I passed through those other phases. And it's kind of like when I was burned out, I knew something was wrong, but I never sat there and thought, wow, I'm burnt out. Like I have all these symptoms. I just knew that I kind of lost hope. So really quick, when you're stressed, that leads to burnout. But when you're stressed, you're much more proactive in dealing with the stressors. But when you're burnt out, that's beyond that. Like you feel hopeless, you feel trapped in your circumstances. So you might not even be doing anything active or proactive to address those stressors anymore. You just might be like letting it ride, that's also a key indicator of burnt out, when you're just not replenished, you're exhausted, you have that cynicism, and you are decreased self-efficacy. I had to say that again, just so that like it's very clear of how this is different from exhaustion. If you're just exhausted, but you feel a great sense of personal achievement and you're not cynical, then that's not necessarily burnout, okay? And if you're just dealing with a lot of stress, but again, you haven't reached that point, there's a difference between the two. I actually talk about that in my second episode, the difference between stress and burnout. Okay, so let's go into the phases. Phase 1, we're all, as healthcare professionals, susceptible to it. And we deal with different amounts of stress on a day-to-day basis. At this point, in phase 1, we're not necessarily feeling symptomatic, although we are exposed to these stressors. So that's kind of bottom baseline. Phase 2 is you're starting to feel these symptoms, and there's 3 sub-phases in phase 2. So phase 2A, the feelings of burnout, exhausted, cynical, uncomfortable, fried, whatever, you are feeling these symptoms intermittently, and you're feeling more fine than not. So I guess 80% more fine and 20% not fine. Phase 2B, you notice that these symptoms of burnout are now becoming more problematic. They're occurring either more frequently or at a higher intensity. You only occasionally feel like your strongest self and your normal compassionate self. So that part of you is now less. Phase 2C, it has been a long time that you felt that you were at your fullest strength, whether that's, again, physically, mentally, physically, social, emotionally, spiritually. However, you're not feeling your strongest, you're not feeling your best, and you're just kind of hanging in there. You're just getting by. You're going through the motions. You're convincing yourself, like how I did, oh my goodness, this was so me. You're just convincing yourself, this is normal, right? Like, I thought it was normal. I was afraid to say how I felt, even though I trusted the people I worked with at this particular place. It wasn't that. It was I didn't want to look like I couldn't handle it. I mean, have you felt like that? Like your coworkers or your employers, whomever, your family, your friends, they were going to judge you that you were weak and you couldn't handle it? Phase 3, you are falling into the danger zone. There are red flags, red sirens, bee-oo, everywhere around you. You are seriously burnt out. That has impacted not just your strength, but your entire life. The landscape of who you are, it has bled into every part of you. So this is when you start to say, this is kind of like where you go from, this is normal, right? To, I don't think I can do this much longer, or I have to find another way to make a living or do something else very soon. So I did come across that, not in my not like when this first occurred to me, but when I was going through my phase of burnout, it occurred through two jobs, right? So very different jobs. In the second job, following the first one, obviously, I was like, I need to get out of here. That was just like, that was the bottom line for me. Like I went through like all these phases, and they differed in the two jobs, but I still went through them. And it was a very short amount of time that this occurred. So I definitely had those thoughts. So I'm going to break phase 3 down into 2 parts. Phase 3A, your baseline now is consistently those symptoms of burnout that I described earlier. That is your baseline. You are kind of dipping into the full-blown danger zone. You have your toes in the water. You're like right there. But you never recover to the doing okay level of energy and compassion. Like, that just doesn't necessarily exist in your world anymore at this time. Phase 3B, your bank account is scary. Like, you are afraid to look at your bank account, your emotional, physical, spiritual bank account, because you know how like in real life, sometimes people are afraid to look at their bank accounts. Like sometimes I am, because I don't know what's going to be in there. This is when, metaphorically speaking, you are afraid to look in there because you are going to go bankrupt. Okay. You are seriously contemplating a new career. And I've seen this happen to people that are nurses and doctors, and they literally just buy a one-way ticket to the British Virgin Islands and work as a bartender there, and like they couldn't be any happier. So it's like, I've seen that happen. People just break, and there's nothing wrong with like there's nothing wrong with changing careers. I'm not saying that, but this is to the point where burnout has affected every part of you, and a big part of it has to do with the work environment, and it has affected every part of you physically, mentally, and you may find yourself that you are medicating or trying to numb or escape. This can look like drinking more alcohol, could look like hours of binge watching TV or emotional eating, falling into a major depression. Your relationships are deteriorating. Your health is deteriorating. So everything is just kind of going out the window. A lot of people, or some people, at least a few people, are probably avoiding you because they know that you are in a serious funk, and your energy, your aura, everything is vibrating super low. So you're most likely someone that people don't want to hang around. And this is, again, like you've hit the bottom of burnout. What I do want to say about burnout is it is contagious in the workplace. So if you are like in one of the earlier phases of burnout, or even at the very end, you may be influencing others around you through your actions, through your verbal or nonverbal communication. People will start to feel it. Or have you ever been in a situation where your coworker was burnt out and it started to rub off on you? Well, you are almost never completely isolated here, because it happens. It happens a lot. And people do understand what you're going through. In my particular case, I'm very high strung, and I have had a history of generalized anxiety, social anxiety. So the way burnout progressed in my journey, it really took the form of anxiety. I was literally on cortisol pumping all the time. And it was exhausting because I never replenished. I was always on the edge. And for some people, it might look more like you might fall into more of a depression. So it affects people very differently. So we're going to go into some very basic ways that you can go about making a difference in your life. Or if you have a friend that you think, or a coworker that you see that they are in one of these phases, you can recommend to them to listen to this episode to help them, because I think this is so important to talk about. That's why I'm talking about it. So one of the first things that you can do is increasing your ability to resist the forces of burnout when you're at the job. I know that a lot of people think it's important, and I think it's important to build your resilience. But what can you do at work that is going to make a difference? Because burnout is contagious. It is a systematic problem, more so than an individual problem. So your workplace, okay, let's say it's draining. How can you minimize the drain while you're on the job? I think one of the biggest things you can do personally while you're on the job to resist falling into burnout. And again, this is a very complex problem. What I'm going to say now isn't the entire solution. These are just 3 little things that you can start doing. So in order to resist, you must be mindful. You must be aware. I wasn't aware. You think you are, but you're really not. I mean, unless you are like, okay, Erica, I am aware. I'm very mindful. I practice mindfulness, but I didn't. I wasn't. So you must be aware of the stress when it arises and notice any negative emotions that when you begin to hold on to them. So you can practice these techniques to release those negative emotions in the moment just by being mindful. And it sounds like mindful. It sounds so foo-foo, like so like uppity, but it really isn't. And I used to never get it, but now I do. So really a great meditation for that. And you can do this before you go to work in the morning, but you have to, or you can, you can think about it while you're at work, not necessarily go into a full meditation, but at least have this picture in your mind, this awareness. You are in the eye of the storm. Okay. So burnout feels like you cannot control what's going on, but I urge you to start practicing control. Be in the eye of the storm. Okay. And I will put some links in the show notes for some meditations and some resources about that and knowing how to make that easy so you can do it every day, or at least most days. I feel like practicing mindfulness should be an everyday thing, but if you're new to it, it's going to take time. Number 2, you have to restore, okay? Because if your outflow is more than your inflow, that's a problem. Restoring your energy is bringing all your bank accounts in your body up to a healthy balance. So how can you do that? There is research out there that suggests that people that are burning out neglect maintaining a healthy lifestyle and fall into poor habits that do not support their health. So it's like a positive feedback loop. So what you can do is be proactive. Again, you are in control. Focus on the quality of your sleep. Focus on good nutrition and regular exercise. You need to move. I talk about, I'm referring to so many other podcast episodes in this show, but you can listen to episode number 5, and I talk about the benefits of moving. Really, that is linked to anxiety, like how moving and exercising is beneficial if you have anxiety. But if you want more info on that, listen to that episode. But you must recharge and restore. And I believe in a good unplugging detox diet, meaning there has to be times in your day built in to completely remove yourself from technology. Because I see our culture and our society so hyper focused on always being connected. And I'm connected a lot of the times because I run an online business, which is a little difficult to disconnect sometimes. But having those times where I put my phone on airplane mode, where I go outside and take a walk, that's the best medicine there is. So how can you restore your personal harmony? How can you not have a balanced life necessarily, but have a harmonious life without necessarily always turning to things that you know deep down you're using as a way to numb or escape? And watching a 30 minutes of whatever, keeping up with the Kardashians. I don't even know if that's still a show, but we all need to zone out a little bit. But when you use certain things to your advantage to escape, and you can self-assess that this is not doing you any good, it's actually not really helping, it's not addressing the problem, then you need to revisit how you can better cope and better recharge on your time off so that you can replenish yourself. Number 3, reduce exposure. Reducing your day-to-day exposure to the draining effects of the workplace. So resisting is about building up your self-defenses and being aware more on the job, realizing that you are the eye of the storm, rebuilding basically your lost energy on your downtime, and really making that restful and recharging. Man, I'm using so many of those R words today. Reduce exposure is about lowering the stress present in your workplace by exerting some control. So what you can do by exerting some control beyond personally is where stepping in and getting the organization to be in charge or to help out with this is really key. Your organization can play a significant role. A lot of people, especially in our society, we think busier is better. Okay? I went to Spain a few years ago. I'm going to Spain again this year, and they know how to live. They are not in a rush. They get their work done, but they carve out a lot of time in their day to live a well-rounded life. They siesta, they have wine at lunch. I love the Spanish lifestyle, at least the traditional Spanish lifestyle, and being busier isn't necessarily always better. So I think sometimes less is more and quality over quantity. So I'd rather personally give quality treatment to 5 patients than shitty treatment to 10 patients in a day. Whether you are the head nurse, or in one of my older jobs, there was a supervisor, OT, PT, and speech. And then there was the owner of the clinic. So if we wanted to communicate something to the owner of the clinic, I had to go through the supervising therapist. But however the structure is in your workplace, whether you're in charge or you're not, try your best to figure out, how can I advocate for not only myself, but to make the entire workplace, the organization, how to make everything run smoother so that we can prevent burnout. Because if you're feeling burnt out, are other people feeling burnt out? Probably. Or you're not, you're not the first or the last person in that organization to feel burnt out. So you might as well do something about it. And you can. And if you can't, then maybe that particular organization is not right for you. But what can you do? Can you leverage, delegate, empower your your team, what suggestions can you implement, or what changes can you implement that you can suggest? More team building, or changing up the way you chart, or maybe changing up some expectations, having a designated area in your workplace for chill, to kind of recharge on the job for a little bit, making the space stigma free so you can talk about these changes, encouraging one another, having a mantra for the week with your colleagues. I mean, whatever that is, how can you address the problem in your workplace? I mean, if you're feeling like you need to leave, then you need to leave. If there's other things going on, if you know it's not the right fit, but if you feel in your heart that you can advocate to make a few changes, and then go for it, and take a look at the whole picture. Take a look at how it's affecting you and others around you, and take a look at your habits. Are your habits putting fuel in the fire in terms of accelerating your burnout? Or are you being more mindful? Are you doing everything you can outside and inside of work? Because what happened to me is that it just happened kind of quickly, and I didn't see it coming, and it was too late, and I had a breakdown on a Wednesday in the middle of the day. I couldn't handle it anymore. I'm sure I had a lot of adrenal fatigue at the time also. And I knew physically my body was going to break down. Mentally, I was not there. So how can you change? All right. So this episode kind of took a few little detours, but I hope all these little detours, because I'm just thinking out loud, in this episode, I'm thinking of how can we change this? And this is not just one person changing it, but it's everyone. It takes a lot of effort to change an organization. So don't think your voice doesn't matter. All right. I've been in a situation where my voice didn't matter, but I tried. I tried my best, and I knew at the end of the day that place wasn't right for me, and that's okay. And during that time, I literally thought I'm going to be one of those people that just gets a one-way ticket to the BVI and becomes a bartender. Like, I thought I was going to be one of those people, and I wasn't really necessarily dissatisfied with my career choice, but it was to the point where I was just like, I can't do this anymore. So recap, there's different stages of burnout, and you have to catch yourself or realize where you are on that stage. We're all in stage 1 at the very least. So how can you change? How can you make proactive changes to prevent it, stay at stage 1, or kind of backtrack if you're in one of the higher stages? What can you do? For more information, go to the show notes. There are some resources there, some meditations, and some visuals. So have a great day, everyone. Bye. Thanks for listening. If you want more, be sure to subscribe to this podcast. Also, share this episode with your friends, and I would be so grateful. If you feel inspired, leave a review on iTunes with an honest comment and/or what you'd like to hear more of, so you can help me out on my journey in delivering meaningful content. Thanks, mis amores.